The rain hadn't stopped since morning. It tapped softly against my windshield, the rhythm slow, hypnotic, like a warning I'd ignored too long. I sat parked outside St. Joseph's Hospital, my hands trembling around my phone, staring at the contact name glowing on the screen. Ethan Bennett. My husband. Except, not really. Not anymore. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked almost foreign, a neat bun, pearl earrings, a silk blouse the color of champagne. The kind of woman who has it all together. The kind who doesn't dial her husband to tell him he's dead. I drew in a shaky breath, the smell of wet asphalt and old leather filling the car. My pulse thudded in my ears. My voice, when it finally came, sounded calm, steady, rehearsed. "Ethan," I whispered when he picked up. "There's been an accident." A pause. Static on the line. Then his voice, warm, distracted. "Liv? Are you okay?" "My husband," I said slowly, "died in a car crash tonight. And my daughter's in the ICU." Silence. Pure, choking silence. For a second, I could almost hear his breath catch. Confusion flickering into something else. Guilt, maybe. Fear. I closed my eyes, leaning back against the seat. "You should probably come down here," I added softly. "Before it's too late." I ended the call before he could answer. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Inside, I smiled for the first time in years. Because this moment, wasn't about death. It was about rebirth. 2 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be the kind of woman who could lie so cleanly, I would have laughed. Back then, I still believed love was something that could be fixed if you worked hard enough, forgave fast enough, stayed quiet long enough. Ethan and I had been married for 9 years. He was charming, the kind of man people instantly liked. The man who sent flowers to my office and kissed our daughter, Emma, on the forehead every morning like it was a ritual. But somewhere between the school runs and late-night emails, something shifted. He started coming home later. Smelled different. Laughed differently. I told myself it was stress. That he loved me, even if he'd forgotten how to show it. Then one evening, while folding laundry, I found a hotel receipt tucked into the pocket of his jacket. The name wasn't mine. The time stamped was 11:47 p.m. The room number, 214. My hands froze mid-fold. The world tilted slightly. When I finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just stared at me, silent, cold, calculating, and said, "Liv, don't make this a big deal. You're overthinking again." That's when something inside me cracked. Later that night, when Emma was asleep, I sat in the kitchen staring at my reflection in the black glass of the microwave. I could barely recognize the woman staring back, tired eyes, chipped nail polish, a faint tremor in her jaw. That's when I remembered my mother's words she'd told me the day I got married. "Never beg a man to love you twice, Olivia. The first time should have been enough." I'd laughed then, thinking I'd never need that advice. But that night, I found the small silver locket she'd left me when she passed. Inside was her photo on one side and a blank space on the other. "Space," she once said, "for the woman you'll become." I held it tight until the metal left an imprint on my palm. That was the moment I decided I would never beg again. So I started saving money. Quietly. Secretly. Every freelance project, every spare dollar, hidden in an account under my maiden name. He thought he had me trapped. He didn't realize I was already walking out the door, one quiet step at a time. And the night he took a business trip that ended in lies and lipstick stains, I knew exactly what I had to do. Because sometimes, to start over, you have to burn the version of yourself that believed him. When you've spent years walking on eggshells, silence becomes your weapon. I learned that quickly. After Ethan's affair, I didn't scream or cry, not anymore. I smiled, packed Emma's lunch, went to work, and pretended life was normal. On the outside, I was still Mrs. Bennett, the graceful wife, the dependable mother. Inside, I was building an escape plan. I'd always loved design, creating something from nothing, turning chaos into order. So, I started freelancing late at night while Ethan slept beside me, his phone face down on the nightstand. Small projects at first, logos, brochures, websites. Each time I got paid, I transferred the money into an account under Olivia Brooks, my maiden name. The first deposit was $120. It felt like freedom. A few months later, I found a client who changed everything. A woman named Margaret Caldwell, CEO of a small interior design firm in Dallas. She'd seen one of my projects online and called me personally. "You've got an eye, Olivia," she said. "You ever thought of doing this full-time?" I remember staring at my computer screen, my cursor blinking over a half-finished invoice. "I've thought about it," I admitted. "Just haven't had the courage yet." Her voice was calm, wise. "Then borrow mine until you find your own." Margaret became my silent mentor, teaching me contracts, pricing, negotiation. She never asked about my husband, but she could sense the story behind my hesitation. She used to say, "A woman doesn't need to shout to be powerful. She just needs to stop apologizing for being one." Those words lit something inside me. Within a year, I had more clients than I could handle. I rented a small workspace downtown, nothing fancy, but it was mine. A whiteboard on one wall, a coffee maker on the other, and a picture of Emma taped above my desk with a note she'd scribbled in her uneven handwriting. "You're my hero, Mommy." Ethan never knew. He still believed I was working part-time for a friend. I kept it that way. At dinner, he'd brag about his firm's promotions, his deals, his stress, while I quietly checked invoices under the table. I learned how to smile without giving anything away. The more independent I became, the more threatened he grew. He started asking questions. "Why are you always on your laptop? Who keeps calling you this late?" I just shrugged. "Work." What I didn't say was, "Work that doesn't depend on you anymore." The day my company hit its first six-figure contract, I didn't tell anyone. I celebrated alone, coffee in hand, music low, tears slipping down my cheeks. Not from sadness, but from relief. Because I'd done it. I'd built something real from the ashes of everything he broke. And as I watched the sun rise that morning, golden light cutting through the blinds, I realized something powerful. He didn't just lose my trust. He'd lost the privilege of knowing who I was becoming. The night I called Ethan, the night I told him my husband had died, wasn't random. It was planned. Every word, every silence. By then, my company, OB Designs, had grown beyond anything I imagined. Margaret had retired and handed me a portfolio of clients. I'd opened a sleek new office on the 23rd floor of a downtown tower, with my name etched on the glass door. But Ethan knew none of that. To him, I was still doing small projects from home, still grateful for his money, still too dependent to ever walk away. And maybe that's why it was so easy for him to keep lying. That morning, I'd seen a photo on social media, a tagged picture from a weekend trip. Ethan, the woman, our daughter, Emma. They looked like a perfect family. Except I wasn't in the picture. That's when I knew it was time. So that night, I parked outside the hospital and made the call that would end the version of my life he still believed in. There's been an accident. My husband died in a car crash. And my daughter's in the ICU. I'd wanted to see what he'd do. Whether guilt would finally sound like remorse. But what he said next still surprised me. "Wait, what? Olivia, slow down. Where are you?" His voice was panicked. Not because of me, but because of the secret he'd been keeping. I could hear a woman's voice faintly in the background. "Who is it?" And that was all the confirmation I needed. "You should probably come down here," I told him softly. "Before it's too late." I hung up. An hour later, he walked into the hospital lobby. Disheveled, wide-eyed, and not alone. The woman from the photo, tall, brunette, wearing a cream coat, stood beside him, clutching her purse like a lifeline. When Ethan saw me, alive and calm, his face drained of color. "Olivia, what the hell is this?" I tilted my head slightly. "You came fast. Guess I shouldn't be surprised." "Where's Emma?" he demanded. "Safe," I said, watching his jaw tighten. "And she's not in the ICU. Not tonight, anyway." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" I took a slow step forward. I called to tell you my husband died, Ethan. And he did. The version of you that I once loved, the man who held my hand at our wedding, who promised to be faithful, that man's gone. He's been gone for years. His lips parted, but no words came out. The woman beside him whispered, "You said you were separated." I smiled, just barely. He's not wrong. He just forgot to mention who left first. Silence hung in the sterile air of the hospital lobby. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Ethan finally exhaled. "You're crazy, Olivia. You can't just." I pulled a small envelope from my bag and handed it to him. Inside were divorce papers, signed, dated, finalized. And next to them, a glossy brochure of OB designs, with my name printed on the founder's page. I said simply. I already did. He stared at the logo, disbelief flickering across his face. "You? This is you." I nodded. Every late night, every small project. Turns out, I wasn't wasting my time waiting for you to grow up. The woman looked down, awkwardly shifting her weight. "I didn't know." "I'm sure you didn't," I said gently. "But now you do." I turned back to Ethan, my voice steady, soft. "I don't need to punish you. Life will do that. I just needed to watch your face when you realized you never broke me. You built me." His mouth opened, but I was already walking away. Behind me, I heard him call my name once. Weak, desperate, unfamiliar. It didn't stop me. That night, as I stepped into my car, I caught my reflection in the glass. Calm, collected, alive. For the first time in years, I saw Olivia Bennett again. The woman my mother always said I'd become. The next morning, the world looked different. Not brighter, just quieter. The storm had passed literally and otherwise. The city glistened under a pale sunrise, streets washed clean, skies streaked with gold. I sipped my coffee by the window of my apartment, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My lawyer, Dana, called around 9. "He signed the financial disclosures," she said. "Looks like he's not going to contest anything. He just wants it done." I smiled faintly. "Good. Let's make sure it's done right. Because ending a marriage isn't the same as ending a war. You don't walk away without setting terms, not for revenge, but for balance." 2 days later, Ethan showed up at my office. He didn't make an appointment. He never did. He looked tired, eyes sunken, tie loosened, a man unraveling. For a second, I almost pitied him. Almost. "Liv, please," he started, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. 5 minutes. That's all you get." He hesitated, then sat. His gaze flicked around the office, the minimalist furniture, the abstract art, the city skyline behind me. "You did all this," he murmured. "On your own." "Yes," I said simply. "And I'm proud of that." He rubbed his temples. "I messed up. I know that. But I can fix it." "Stop." Just that one word, and he froze. "You can't fix what you broke by pretending it never happened," I said quietly. "You don't get to rewrite the story now that you've realized you're not the hero." He swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," I replied. "Except honesty. And accountability." He frowned. "Accountability?" "Yes," I said, leaning back in my chair. "For Emma. You'll be in her life, but under my terms. No introducing new women until she's ready. No lies about why we're not together. You'll pay your share, on time, without complaint." He nodded slowly, guilt flickering in his eyes. "And you," I added softly, "need to stop running from who you are. Because until you face the man you became, you'll keep destroying every good thing that tries to love you." His eyes glistened. "You really hate me that much?" I shook my head. "I don't hate you, Ethan. Hate would mean you still have power over me. You don't." He looked down, defeated. I let the silence sit for a moment, then added, "Do something decent with your life. Be a better father than you were a husband. That's all I ask." He nodded again, quietly, and stood. At the door, he turned once more. "Olivia, you really called me that night just to tell me I was dead?" I met his eyes.
No.
I called to tell myself I was alive. He left without another word. When the door clicked shut, I leaned back and exhaled slowly. My hands didn't tremble this time. My voice didn't crack. I wasn't the woman who once begged for love. I was the woman who decided she deserved better, and built it with her own hands. 3 months later, the air smelled like spring again. Fresh rain, blossoming trees, new beginnings. Emma and I had moved into a small townhouse near the coast. White walls, sunlight spilling through wide windows, laughter echoing off the walls. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. And for the first time, it felt ours. Every morning, I made pancakes while Emma danced barefoot on the kitchen tiles, her hair wild, her smile unstoppable. She still asked about her dad sometimes. Innocent questions, soft and curious. "Does Daddy still love me?" she asked one night, her small voice floating through the dark. I tucked her in, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Always," I said gently. "He just doesn't know how to show it the right way." She nodded sleepily. "But you love me, right?" "With everything I am," I whispered. After she fell asleep, I sat on the porch, the sea breeze cool against my face. I held the small silver locket, the one for my mother, turning it over in my hand. The space on the right side had always been blank. That night, I finally slipped a photo inside, one of Emma and me, laughing at the beach. That empty space had been waiting all along for the woman I'd become. I thought back to everything. The betrayal, the tears, the endless nights I doubted myself. And then the slow, quiet rebuilding. The freedom that came from realizing I didn't need to be chosen to matter. I chose myself, and that changed everything. Sometimes I still hear his voice, a voicemail, a message, a polite update about Emma. He sounds smaller now. Maybe that's what happens when a man finally realizes the woman he underestimated learned how to live without him. I don't feel anger anymore. Just distance. Peaceful, earned distance. As I watched the horizon fade into a soft amber glow, I thought about the call that started it all. That one impossible sentence. My husband died in an accident. And in a way, it was true. The husband I'd built my life around, the man I once believed in, he did die. Not on the road, but in the mirror of his own lies. And the woman he left behind? She didn't just survive. She rose. I closed my eyes, feeling the wind lift my hair, and whispered, not for him, but for myself. I called my husband that night to say my husband had died. But really, it was the night I came back to life. The waves crashed softly in the distance, steady, rhythmic, alive. Just like me.